And we're back, everybody. So now we're going to get on to our last segment of the day. I've got Russell here with me.
Here we go.
We're going to cover knife handle material. So just to start off, just to let everybody know, because we deal with a variety of handle materials, everything we get is going to be sourced responsibly from people and websites that have done knife handle materials for years. We don't buy off Craigslist. We don't look at third-party markets or markets that are not allowed. So just so you guys know, everything you see our handles with, you can find readily on almost any website in knife making world, right? So starting off, we're going to go with natural woods and stabilized woods.
So natural woods are literally woods that haven't been treated basically any way. They haven't been, we'll talk about stabilizing, they haven't been stabilized, they haven't had any pores filled of any kind. So literally this is straight wood, it's only wood, you grind into it, it's wood. So we do this with a few woods at this point, one of them being Massacre ebony, we'll do olive wood and a couple other dense woods that are really too dense to be stabilized properly, so you don't stabilize them at all because they really don't need it. So what you get is you get a very natural sheen to the woods, and you do have a little extra care. You have to make sure it stays hydrated. So we recommend once or twice a year soaking it, fully immerse it in mineral oil, leave it for a day or so, pull it out. It's not going to hurt anything. Mineral oil is good for any steel, any wood, even if it is stabilized and you don't know, you're not going to hurt it if you soak it in mineral oil.
So very similar, a question that just kind of would come up, very similar how we would take care of a high carbon knife. We would want to take care of a natural wood knife so that the wood doesn't get any kind of issues with it, from moisture going down to it to any kind of corrosion that chemicals or anything can happen to it.
In fact, we often pair natural wood handles with high carbon steel blades, so you have that similar maintenance aspect of it.
Yeah. And just another quick question. Not all woods come natural because we get some of them stabilized, which we're going to get into here in a minute. But about how much of the natural woods that you use are as dense as you're saying? Do you use any ones that are not dense?
For handles, especially if it's really moisture sensitive, we only use it stabilized. Okay. You look at like maples, walnuts, they are super moisture sensitive. Okay. You change regions, super humidity day, you don't want it swelling. So there are a few woods that are really good examples of ebonies, lignum vitae, desert ironwood, things that are really dense that just don't have a lot of pore space, so they're not going to swell a lot anyway. Those are not things that we would use completely unstabilized, no seal or filler involved, and they'll be perfectly fine just by themselves. So
it sounds like a lot of the woods you use are very dense, so that already has the kind of protection for moisture not to get into it as much. Yeah. Awesome, awesome. So let's go to stabilized woods.
So stabilized woods, what this process is the gentleman we have do it, he takes the wood, puts it into a vacuum chamber, literally pulls all the air out of the wood, out of the chamber, and has an active vacuum that holds it there for a full day before he injects the liquid polymer resin into this tank, which will functionally fill up all the pore space of the wood, and then when it polymerizes, you're left with plastic in all of the pore spaces of your wood. So you're basically plasticizing your wooden handle material to where then it won't shrink or swell as much. There still is a margin of error in it, but it also takes a much higher sheen that you won't get on most wood handles. At the same point, it won't crack nearly as much. So like if you drop it on a tile or concrete floor, it'll more than likely dent and not crack or crack off of your knife handle. So it's a lot more structural, a lot more safe. It'll deal with moisture better because the moisture literally, it can't penetrate into the pore space. It can't transfer to your blade, so it literally just hits the pores where would normally be open pores. It hits that resin and literally just bounces right off.
Awesome. And just a quick question, because I also noticed that this is a stabilized wood, but that color doesn't look natural, or is it?
This is Purple Heart. This is a natural color wood, where in a natural wood handle, it would actually darken over time because it interacts with the oils in your hand. Having it be stabilized, it'll actually stay this color purple as to eventually going black. So there's a huge benefit for some woods where over time, like this wood will literally become black, where if it's stabilized, it won't change anymore.
Okay. Now, are there some woods that they stabilize where they color them as well?
Yes. So you'll look into like this guy that we just put up on the website. So this is oak. Its natural color and texture is just tan, and this is something that we had stabilized black. When we had to stabilize, they put a black dye in it, and that way you get this super high contrast between the natural tan colors and the black.
So basically in here, you're getting a variety of the color where the stabilization actually took place is where the color is the deepest, correct?
Correct.
So that's where the open spaces were that could potentially have moisture coming to them
Yes.
if they weren't stabilized.
Correct.
Great. So now we know that the color and the stabilized process goes into those micro pore space, those tiny
Yeah.
holes where moisture can potentially go into,
Yes.
and covers them completely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
It's good stuff.
So that's natural wood, stabilized woods. Guys, if you have any more questions, definitely keep the questions coming. Comment below or hit us a message up, Instagram, Facebook, social media, email, you know it. So next thing we're going to go to is man-made materials. We're going to start off with micarta. Now, what exactly is micarta?
So micarta is a laminate material. So you'll take paper, linen, canvas, and there's a few other ones, and it is put in compression and injected with either epoxy or resin. It's done both ways.
Okay.
And it's set under compression until that bonding agent goes off or cures fully, and you're left with a super hard, zero pore space material that looks the best when you really carve into it a lot, because you'll reveal the layers of that specific material. Black paper micarta looks very black. It's designed to look like a water buffalo horn, where the different color or the more coarse material you get into, linen has a little bit of a weave. Canvas, you can really see the weave of it and provides a really cool texture, and it also increases the grip, so when it gets wet, it's not slippery.
So between the difference of material used, you said paper, canvas,
And linen are the popular ones, yeah.
And those will, used on a handle and carved different ways, will show and relieve different textures in the material.
Correct.
Awesome, awesome.
And very similar to micarta is G10, which is the same process but using a fiberglass substrate as opposed to the linen, paper, or canvas. This is using fiberglass. So literally sheets of the stuff that's in your attic, providing insulation. They can color it, they can make it into sheets, and this is a great example of what it looks like when it's two-tone. So you have a gray and black, and you can see the layers in there that are formed when it's done. Let me figure out what a camera is. To where you can see the different layers, and literally it's layer of gray, layer of black, layer of gray, and they'll completely saturate that in polymer resin, put it under compression until that bonding agent cures, and you're left again with zero pore spaces, and the more you carve into it, the cooler it looks.
I didn't ask this question with the micarta, but I am going to ask it with the G10 and then also ask you about micarta. Colors, do they come in different colors?
All over the place. Like, so this is the first time we used one of the bicolor ones. You can get this in red and black and red and green and black and basically, if you can think of it, they probably make it usually only the primary colors.
Right.
A lot with black, so black and red looks really cool. Black and green, coyote and black. Basically your standard handled material colors with black, and then some mix and match.
And yeah, you said standard. I have seen a lot of two different colors in G10s, but I've seen some as much as 3 or 4. People can get pretty carried away with it.
Yeah, and you can also make this stuff at home, so not all of it will be commercially made.
Right.
So when you see ones that are like, wow, that's a color I've never seen before, you could literally make this stuff at home with epoxy. The same epoxy we use to bond handles onto knives, you can make that that fiberglass, whether it's G10 or Micarta, you can make that with materials at home.
And that kind of ties into what we said in the beginning of getting this from reputable people. We
Yes.
also get it from people who've been doing it for a while.
Correct.
They have a lockdown process.
Yeah.
Because we've gotten some stuff from newer people doing it, and
Yeah.
sometimes their
Hit or
process
miss.
is a little young.
Yep.
So the handle material falls off, falls apart.
Delaminates.
Delaminates.
Yeah.
Putting it on, we have an issue. So that's another big thing from getting it from reputable sourcers. It's not just a matter of how they get it responsibly, but how their process is. A lot of the guys that we get our materials from, they've been doing it for a very long time.
Yeah.
So we trust them. Knife makers all over trust them, and they're just widely known. So next material is going to be
Carbon fiber.
Carbon fiber.
I might be skipping around, but carbon fiber, it's another layered and or woven material. So whether you can see it on the camera, like you can see this is literally woven together. You can get carbon fiber that's cheaper, that is literally simply layered like G10 or Micarta, but the really nice stuff, it's woven through at least 3 layers, and you can see the weave in it. And when you carve into it, it really creates that nice woven pattern that you're used to seeing in carbon fiber stuff. Super light, so it adds almost no weight to a knife. They use it a lot on folding knives, especially high-end folder knives, because it is super structural and it is very lightweight, and it looks great. Typically black, you can get it black and gray, but otherwise you can get it with stuff woven through it, where it's carbon fiber woven with copper or brass, and you're talking some really high-end stuff at that point, but it's great to work with, and it's great to have in a handle.
And if you've taken a look on our social media a while back, or a couple of our older knife photos, one of the ones you were talking about, the carbon fiber woven with copper.
Yes.
One of the great handle materials we use, beautiful, really pops out. We still have some, we don't have anything with a knife on it now to show you, which kind of sucks on that note. But you talked about the regular carbon fiber pattern, and we've been dealing with that for a fair amount of time.
Yeah.
But there's a new kind of pattern going out and about right now where it's this marble-ish looking pattern.
Yes.
And I know you've been excited to kind of play with that. What do you think is the issues there, although we haven't touched up on it?
Having looked at it, so it's not woven, which is carbon fiber's primary structure. It's woven together. It's these tiny sheets. They weave it very similar like baskets, right? So it's a very strong, and then it's laminated and layered together. With the marbled, it's literally lots of tiny bits of carbon fiber, and they stir it into a soup, laminate it down, and put it under compression. So it's not woven per se, but because it's still long, skinny fibers pushed together, you still get a lot of that natural interlocking, interlacing of the carbon fiber, and it's a really cool look. I really love it.
We both liked it a lot, so hopefully we'll be dabbling in that soon, getting it out to you guys. We like to try and stay on top of a lot of things that come out. We also like to play with new things. So once we get a hold of some marble carbon fiber, we'll definitely be putting it out there.
Looking forward to it.
So that covers carbon fiber. Now we're going to get into some polymers and resins. So here's going to be a little bit wider variety of a handle material that can go in so many different ways. And as you see, Russell's pulling out more than just one knife right now, because polymers and resins can go all kinds of places.
So pine cone, kiln dried, surrounded by resin. And then you have Juma, which is fairly new on the scene. This is like our second or third knife we've worked with it. And they use the polymer to create this really cool scale-like, it's not a texture because you can't feel it, but it's literally in the handle material. And then Kirinite, which is a polymer, and then they basically ribbonize another polymer and put it in there, so you get that really cool pattern.
So just to kind of give everyone a real easy basis of this, and correct me if I'm wrong, but between the three of these, basically what we have here is a very fancy resin or glue.
Yes.
Okay? And depending on what we have as far as the look of texture, we either have a second color and mixture of glue, correct?
Yeah.
You get a pine cone or something you cast into the resin.
Yeah.
Or you have a pattern that you lay into it as well, right? And depending on the process, depending on what the material is, it's then hardened and shaped into knife scales to go on the knives, correct?
Correct.
Now, the only thing different that I remember you telling me is that Kieranite is a patented process.
Correct.
Which is why it's then called Kieranite.
Yes.
When this is a very similar process, but the process of Kieranite is not put into this.
Correct.
So this is now something different.
Right. And it's patented under Juma.
Exactly.
And they have their own specific way of doing things. But what you're left with is, at its core, a completely near indestructible solid piece of resin. Whether it's resin, a high polymer resin, whatever specific type of resin is, it's poreless. It is completely solid. So nothing's getting into it. Nothing's coming out of it. It's not going to shrink. It's not going to swell. It's not going to crack. Again, these materials will dent before they crack. Denting can be cleaned up. It's fairly easy to deal with, and it's great stuff. And it really is super hard. Some of this stuff is really hard. And
this, unlike our stabilized woods, a lot of people can really easily access the materials to make handle scales like this. So there is a very wide range of quality when we're searching for these types of handles.
We have to be very careful, and we'll test it before we ever put it on a knife. We'll test it, we'll play with it, we'll literally hit it with a hammer, cut off little chunks of it, grind it differently, see how the polish goes on it, and really make sure it's going to be structural. Because we've gotten stuff and it's had some really big voids in it, not just pore space, but voids where no material is. And if that ends up like right on your tang or in a spot where we need handle material, then it's going to cause an issue.
Yeah, but lately we've seen some guys, we haven't tried them out just yet, who've come up with some really cool looking different polymers and resins. And you'll hear us say that a lot because it varies. From Kieranite to Juma, which are patented, actually trademarked processes, to pine cone resins. Instead of saying that over and over again, we just like to refer to them as polymers and resins. And guys, they vary so broad that if we tried covering them all in this episode, it would literally go over what we try to outfit for one episode. So we're going to stop there at the polymers and resins and move on to our other handle material, which is going to be one of our fancier, higher end materials, and this is bone. Very different variety of types of bones that we use, and correct me if I'm wrong. Giraffe.
Giraffe is the primary bone we now use. We use it because of its density, and it takes color and the stabilization really well. It's super varied. You can get it across the board in colors, in variegations, and it's naturally more dense, and we love it. It's proven handle material that we've used for years. As opposed to, so some of the other popular ones are cow, giraffe is the one we use, camel. I've used a lot of wildebeest in the past. It's great for if you want to do a hidden tang knife, and zebra are the big ones that we've used in the past. And we've kind of settled on where primarily we use the giraffe bone.
I spaced out when I was showing the knife over to the camera. Did you talk about whether or not these are stabilized?
I did not. So thank you. These are stabilized. So any of the color you see on bone is put in there through the stabilization process. Bones are white.
Right.
Like straight up, like bones are white. Anything you see that's not white, it was put there with the stabilization process, because there's no point in dyeing a bone without stabilizing it, because it is a dead and decaying material otherwise. This way it won't crack, it won't shrink, and you get the cool color in it. And it really, the color impregnates all the way through the handle material at that point.
So real quickly, without getting too much into detail, a very similar process of stabilizing, similar to wood, where you take all the moisture out of the micropore spaces, inject it with a polymer resin. This one clearly has been dyed. So because remember, bone's not naturally this color, guys. If it is, you've got an issue. But dyed with this jade green, and then taken out so that all the space, all the pore space in here is now completely filled.
Correct.
Awesome. Awesome, guys. Definitely one of our higher end choices. Comes in a variety of colors. We've even seen bone that's been double dyed,
or 3 or 4. And it gets crazy colors. The colors mix, creates a rainbow.
And very similar to wood, where there's densities that aren't as filled or not filled
Yeah.
is where the color actually bleeds into more or less, so you get variations
You get
of
nice streaks of white.
right,
Yeah.
in different colors that if there's a polymer resin in there.
Yeah.
Any concerns when you have a knife with bone that we should be worried about?
Yes. Don't drop it on concrete.
Okay, and why is that?
Number one, it's still a bone. It's still going to be fragile. I like to put a bolster on the end of most bone if it's going to be used over concrete anyway. But yeah, it's the one thing. It's still bone. It's still fragile. It is a higher end thing, so it's not going to be on your everyday carry where if you drop it, it's at a risk for cracking. That's really it. Don't drop it on cement or tile floors. Obviously no dishwasher for any knives, let alone handmade knives. Yeah, just don't drop it on cement.
Okay. That kind of covers everything that we're talking about with bone. We also are looking for, do we have an antler? I was just looking. We're going to have to take a look.
We have a hunk of antler, but we
Yes.
don't have a knife with antler on it. So antler, you're probably familiar with it. Everyone's seen a deer, an elk. Oh, there we go. Good job. And here it comes, here it comes. And so these are, again, natural, completely unstabilized materials, so you're going to need to have a little care with them, mineral oil once or twice a year. It is a dead and decaying material, but you can see, I mean, these things are solid. You'll be able to see, like this guy has a tiny little hole in it. That's okay. We see other examples where the complete center of that is literally a lattice. That is not an optimal piece to be put on a knife. You want solid antler all the way down, all the way through your tang. So these are really primarily hidden tangs. Something this big can be cut. There's one around somewhere, but I'm not going to look around for it. But if it's a big enough antler, it can be cut in half, and you can put it on a knife as a simple slab as opposed to doing hidden tang. But the large percentage of knives that are done with antler are hidden tang, so they'll either have a guard or they'll have, this sticking out the back. Really cool to use. Lots of natural texture. We try to grind very little on these because we want as much of the texture as possible, but at the same point, it's a tool. It's going to be held. You can't have a tine in the middle of where your hand needs to be. So sometimes they got to go, and you just carve it down until it's comfortable.
Another thing, a lot of the bone we use, or antler, I apologize, is very dense, which allows us to actually be more comfortable in working with it. But one thing I've noticed with a lot of the dense antlers that we use is when we do carve into it, or even when we're getting ready to finalize and polish it up, it polishes up nicely.
Beautifully.
When it is very dense and everything is nice and compact in here and there's not a lot of pore space, it allows for a beautiful shine.
Beautiful
and
polish.
it is one of the better natural handle materials that we use that just comes out and really shows its character.
Yeah, we've done refurbs on carving sets that date back to the early 1900s, late 1800s, and they're still on a knife. These were things that were abused, they weren't properly cared for, and they're still on the knife. And with a little care going forward, they'll last another 100 years or so. So it's one of those things of cherish them, take care of them, and they will literally last at least your lifetime, if not more.
Right on. So everyone, just to wrap up this last segment, I'm going to ask you a question just to kind of put everything in a couple categories. We went over micartas, man-made materials, wood, stabilized and natural, and bone. The two main knives we do here in Serenity Knives, or types of knives I should say, are kitchen knives and carrying knives.
Yeah.
And just to kind of split those up, right, along with the handle materials, if we were to ask you on a regular basis, and this is not the everyday person who's going to ask for the highest quality or the bones all the time, what would you recommend as far as what kind of handle materials to put towards carrying knives and kitchen knives?
The overlap is huge.
Okay.
I mean, excellent question, but the overlap is huge. We've been doing a lot more handles on chef's knives that you typically see on hunters, tacticals, that kind of carry knives. And so the crossover we have right now is huge. Like carbon fiber on a chef's knife, have I ever seen it before? No, but I love the look of it. I love the idea of it. It's structural. I'm gonna do it. So at this point, there's not anything I wouldn't put on a carry knife that I would put on a kitchen knife, and vice versa. It's just if you're going to carry a bone knife and you're going to carry it every day, we want to put some type of metallic protection behind it, so that way if it drops, it's going to ding the bolster and not crack the bone. If that's not an option, there are other things that look a lot alike it. This is another example of a G10 that's literally designed to look like that. They did a pretty good job. And so there's nothing I would put on a chef's knife that I wouldn't put on an everyday carry knife. Yeah, no, not really.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So what I'm getting from that is basically whether you're carrying or having a kitchen knife, the handle materials vary widely, one.
Yeah.
But then two, if you're using a more fragile material, which we have, and that's out there, we just want to better protect it.
Yeah.
We can do that for you whether or not you
Perfect.
want bone, a natural wood, a stabilized wood,
Yeah.
and you saw the variety of different things that we have. It also goes along with not just something that mimics it, very similar to these two jades, but for someone who's more on a budget, you get something like this that'll cost less. And let me just pull this out so you can kind of see. You get something like this that'll cost less, be more protective and not as higher end, and still get the same look and feel.
Very similar look.
Very, very same look and feel. You really can't tell unless you get really close up to this, but from here, you really don't know that these are two different materials. Here we have a G10 handle in jade, and here we have a jade bone that's dyed and stabilized.
Yeah.
So only real big recommendation is that if you're going to use a bone or a higher end material that's capable of breaking,
or fragile.
let's take care of it for you. We'll put something metallic or something to guard it from doing that.
And we're going to talk about bolsters and handle construction, bolster pommel interruptions in our either next video or sequential videos, and we'll talk more about what all of those terms mean as well.
Definitely, everyone.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up today. Thank you again for joining us. We really appreciate it. Continue to watch our videos. Don't forget to comment. Come up with name suggestions. We love all the suggestions we've got. We've got a list going. Russell, Stephen, and I, like I said earlier, are kind of choosing down and narrowing down our names. We'll come up with three, one from each of us on next Saturday.
Yeah.
You guys are going to choose, and then we'll go ahead and announce the winner, and they'll be able to pick one of their two knives. Thank you again for watching. Join us next Saturday. We're out.